Recruits number 10 on the list. Excuse me. Number 9 on the list, longtime wide receiver, mostly played for the Titans and the Ravens. That is Derek Mason, who played 15 seasons in the NFL, made 2 Pro Bowls, and once was a All-Pro first team. That did come as a returner, though, earlier in his career. For his career, 943 receptions, 12,061 receiving yards, and 66 receiving touchdowns. Currently, he's 17th all-time in receptions, 24th all-time in receiving yards, and tied for 48th all-time in receiving touchdowns. He had 8 seasons of 1,000-plus yards receiving. All 8 of those came in a 9-year span. He also had 3 return touchdowns in his career. Once had over 100 receptions and 3 times had over 90 receptions. Again, a very good career for Derek Mason. Made a Super Bowl as a member of the Titans. But, just because of his longevity doesn't mean he's going to get in. You look at his career, he never had that, season that can make you look in astonishment at how good it was. Just was a very consistently good wide receiver. Again, though, not with how many good wide receivers there have been. You look at some of the names. You look at Torrey Hall and Isaac Bruce, put up better numbers than Mason. They're not really even getting close. I believe both of them weren't finalists last year. Derek Mason, very good career. Probably not Hall of Fame worthy, though. Number 8 on the list, a guy who made Mike Ditka wear a wig of dreadlocks. That is Ricky Williams, running back for the Saints and Dolphins for his career. Played 11 seasons. Surprisingly, just made 1 Pro Bowl. Was also All-Pro first team that season. Finished with 10,900 rushing yards, 29th all-time, 66 rushing touchdowns, tied for 37th all-time. His 1,853 rushing yards in 2002 led the NFL. He had 5 seasons of at least 1,000 yards, also added 342 receptions and 8 touchdowns in his career. What really hurts his Hall of Fame case is he retired for a season in 2004, then came back, and then was suspended the whole 2006 season due to not passing the substance abuse policy. So missing 2 years of action really hurt his chances, plus just 1 Pro Bowl in his career. So, was a good running back for a long time. Again, though, probably not Hall of Fame worthy. Number 7 on the list, linebacker, spent most of his career with the Steelers, also spent time with the Cardinals. That is Joey Porter, who was actually involved in that Bengals-Steelers game, going onto the field as a Steelers assistant head coach. But in the NFL, as a player, he played 13 seasons, made 4 Pro Bowls, was named to 1 All-Pro first team, was named to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, 2nd team All-2000s. For his career, he finished with 98 sacks. 17 and a half of those came in 2008 when he finished 2nd in the NFL. Had 3 seasons with at least 10 sacks. Also in his career had 12 interceptions and 25 forced fumbles. Recovered 2 fumbles for touchdowns. Intercepted 2 passes for touchdowns. And also won a Super Bowl with the Steelers. Very good career for Joey Porter. Known as one of the better linebackers. For many years he was playing. Probably not a Hall of Famer, though. Number 6 on the list, and this is the last guy I think will always remain on the outside looking in. I mean, you never know. But I'm going to say number 6, as I mentioned, last guy, I don't expect to ever get in. but he's got a chance. That's Chad Johnson or Ocho Cinco, whatever you want to call him. For his career, played 11 seasons, made 6 Pro Bowls, twice was All-Pro first team. For his career, 766 receptions, 11,059 yards, 67 touchdowns. All-time 35th in receptions, 33rd in receiving yards, and tied for 45th in receiving touchdowns. As I mentioned earlier with Derek Mason, with all these great wide receivers, who have played over, the past, say, 15, 20 years, it's going to be that much harder for guys to get in. I mean, you look at guys like Tim Brown, took Tim Brown many times on the Hall of Fame ballot before he got in. Wide receiver, it's just such a bunch that, a lot of very good receivers in their heydays just aren't going to make the Hall of Fame. I mean, Chad Johnson, he led the NFL once in receiving yards, had 8 1,000-yard seasons, including 7 in a row, and had 4 seasons with at least 90 catches. So it was definitely a very good wide receiver, made a Pro Bowl in more than half his seasons in the NFL. Maybe if his career lasted a little longer, I know 11 seasons isn't necessarily a brief career, but you look at someone like Calvin Johnson, who just retired after the year, but he was completely dominant. I don't believe Chad Johnson was dominant at the level Calvin Johnson is, whose career was also not as lengthy as some of these other wide receivers who are getting in the Hall of Fame. But Calvin Johnson, I believe, will get in when he becomes eligible. Chad Johnson, though, never was dominant at the level Calvin Johnson was. I just don't think he gets in. Now, these 5 guys, I believe, all have the opportunity to get in. I don't believe they're all going to be first ballot. Actually, if you ask me to predict, I would say only the guy who's going to be number 1 on the list will get in on the first ballot. I mean, it's hard to get in on the first ballot. I mean, Terrell Owens didn't get in on the first ballot, and he's, I believe, 2nd all-time receptions, 3rd in receiving yards, something like that. Or no, 2nd in receiving yards, 3rd in receiving touchdowns. And he didn't get in on the first ballot, so it's not easy to get on the first ballot. Number 5, he's a guy I'm completely on the fence on as to whether he should be in the Hall of Fame. It's definitely a tough call. That is Donovan McNabb, longtime quarterback with the Philadelphia Eagles. Also spent short times with the Washington Redskins and Minnesota Vikings. In his career, he played 13 seasons, made 6 Pro Bowls, started at quarterback 161 times in his career, had a 98, 62, and 1 record. Currently, his 37,276 passing yards are 21st all-time. His 234 touchdowns are 28th all-time. Compare that to his 117 interceptions, so he has a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. For his career, a number that's not that high, and which makes me quite on the fence whether he should be in or not. 59.0 completion percentage, not that great. Did a lot with his feet during his career. 3,459 rushing yards and 29 rushing touchdowns. In his career, had a 9-7 playoff record. Did make the Super Bowl once with the Eagles, where they lost to the New England Patriots. Again, a guy who never quite had a dominant season. I know he had one season where his passer rating was over 100, so I mean that was a very strong season. But when you look at the back of his football card, you don't see any numbers in bold because he never really led a passing category in his career. It's kind of hard to put someone in the Hall of Fame who never was considered, possibly the best quarterback of his time, with that, especially when they haven't won a Hall of Fame. And I know that's kind of unfair. When McNabb played in the era with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, seen by many. Many consider either of them to be best quarterback of all time, or on most people's top 5 all time at least. So that's kind of unfair to say, well, McNabb was never considered the best quarterback. It's really a tough call whether he gets in. I definitely think he's not going to get in on the first ballot. It's arguable. In my opinion, I think Kurt Warner has the better Hall of Fame resume due to winning a Super Bowl, due to being a former MVP. Two things Donovan McNabb did not do. But definitely one of the better quarterbacks of his era. A guy who could definitely get in the future. Don McNabb, number 5 on the list. Number 4 on the list, wide receiver, played his whole career with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is Hines Ward. Long regarded as the best blocking wide receiver while he was playing. During his career, he played 14 seasons and made 4 Pro Bowls. He won 2 Super Bowls, one of which he was named the Super Bowl MVP. In his career, he had 1,000 career receptions, exactly 1,000 on the dot, 12,083 receiving yards, and 85 receiving touchdowns. Currently, he is 13th all-time in receptions, 23rd all-time in receiving yards, and tied for 15th all-time in receiving touchdowns. In his career, he had 1 season where he had over 100 receptions. He's had 4 seasons where he had over 90 receptions, and had 6,000-plus receiving yard seasons, and had 3 seasons with at least 10 receiving touchdowns. So Hines Ward, when you include, his ability to block downfield, which is an unselfish trait, I believe, for wide receivers. There's many wide receivers who do not know how to block properly. Hines Ward definitely wasn't one of them. I definitely see him as a guy who could potentially get in the Hall of Fame eventually, especially since, he was on many great Steelers teams, 2 of which won Super Bowls. Don't think he'll get in on the first ballot, but I could definitely see him getting in eventually. That is Hines Ward. Number 3 on the list, one of the better safeties during the prime of his career. Spent most of his career at the Eagles, towards the end with the Denver Broncos. That is Brian Dawkins. 16 seasons in the NFL, 9 Pro Bowls, 4 times was an All-Pro first team. Had 37 career interceptions, had at least 1 in every season until the last season of his career in 2011. Forced 36 fumbles in his career, had 26 sacks, was named to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, first team All-2000s, and he has the 6th most starts in NFL history by a player in the secondary, with 221 starts to his name. As I mentioned, long seen as one of the better, if not the best, safety in the game during parts of his career. The problem is safety isn't necessarily a position where a lot of safeties get in. I forget where I saw it, but it's been quite a while since someone was voted in on the ballot at safety. You see guys like Steve Atwater and John Lynch. They have not been able to get in. You could say Ronnie Lott, but there was a time when he was playing cornerback. I believe for like 4 or 5 seasons he was playing cornerback. So, safety just not a position that Hall of Fame committee likes putting guys in. Brian Dawkins, as I mentioned, was an elite safety. I believe he should eventually get in, maybe not first ballot, but, he's right there with John Lynch. I'm not sure who I would choose over the other. Dawkins might have the better accolades with the 9 Pro Bowls and 4 All-Pro first teams, but John Lynch was one of the anchors of a top-ranked defense that won the Super Bowl, and, he had a long, lengthy, stellar career as well. So those are 2 safeties, I believe, who probably should get in eventually. But for this list, number 3, Brian Dawkins. Number 2, longtime defensive end, spent most of his career with the Dolphins before ending with the Jets. That is Jason Taylor, who played 15 seasons, made 6 Pro Bowls.